Hello and welcome to Connect. I'm your host, Randy Shabilo. On today's show, we'll have Steve Molinelli from the Saskatchewan Aviation Museum, as well as Lenore Swiston with the Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee. As always, we'd like to hear from you. Follow us on Facebook at Connect YXC, catch past interviews on the Shaw Community Link YouTube channel, email us at connectyxc@gmail.com, or leave a message at 306-665-3796. Saskatchewan's aviation history and the museum here in Saskatoon, along with decades of training pilots, is finally getting some traction, and we have Steve Molinelli, assistant manager, joining us today. Steve, thanks for taking some time and coming down and giving us a little bit of insight on what's going on there.
Thanks for having me, Randy. Really appreciate it.
Let's start a little bit with you and your role and how you came to be. You've had an interest in aviation for a while. Talk a little bit about how that grounded you in your current role.
Sure. Well, my dad was an aircraft maintenance engineer with Canadian Airlines for over 30 years. And so I grew up around airplanes and always had a passion for them. And I actually came about this job as a volunteer first. So I volunteered here first, and then they were looking for a full-time staff member. So I threw my name in the hat, and here I am. So I've been with the museum just a year now. So pretty exciting.
Almost say the rest is history.
The rest is history.
What types of things does the museum showcase, and what is part of the programming that happens there?
So our biggest mandate is to tell the story of aviation specifically as it pertains to Saskatchewan. So most of our artifacts, all our aircraft have some sort of tie or a story to Saskatchewan. So whether it's involving the British Commonwealth Training Plan, which are our yellow airplanes, or airplanes like our Tracker that used to put out fires up in northern Saskatchewan. So they've all got a connection here, and they all have stories here. We are also a flying museum. So we currently have two of our aircraft that fly in the summer months, a de Havilland Tiger Moth, which is a little biplane, yellow one, and a North American Harvard, which is a big 600 horsepower radial airplane. So we offer rides to the public, and those can be booked between May and October.
And I would take it that we would need to contact the museum to book those flights with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Either through our website, our social media platforms, or directly by phone.
So when we look at where the museum came from and the origin of it, talk a little bit about how it's funded and basically how it started to gel with that basic concept. I find that interesting.
So the museum itself, we've only been open to the public since 2018, but it originated many, many years before that. And it was the dream of some local enthusiasts who got together and saw the importance that it had to have a museum locally telling that story of aviation as it pertains to Saskatchewan. So it took a lot of years of building, and there was a lot of forefathers before myself and other people before it came to doors open in 2018. But as far as museums go, we're very, very young on the scene. Most of our friends and compadres in the museum world have been around for 50 years. And so there's some very unique challenges that come into place, especially when it comes to funding.
Well, no big secret. I guess when I was a teenager, I was riding my bike out to the airport to wash airplanes. So I have a bit of history with that particular part of our city and some of the aviation buffs that did happen to hang around there. I was a hangar rat for many years. When we look at the transition of aviation, you talked about the British Commonwealth Training Program, and I'm aware of, I guess, a training program up in North Battleford as well back in the Second World War. Story about Johnny Knight that died there. But what is the significance of that British Commonwealth Training Program and what it had here in the province?
Well, believe it or not, we actually had 16 air bases in Saskatchewan that supported that training mission. And we had probably more types of aircraft here in the prairies than a lot of other provinces did. We had the Tiger Moth, the Harvard, the Anson. So there was a lot of pilots trained here. And it was such a perfect place to do it because the weather was maybe not the best, but it was pretty predictable. So they could do a lot more training out here than they could elsewhere. So that's really why it's important for us to tell that story and offer those flights to give people a glimpse into the past and see what it was like back then. And you mentioned North Battleford. PA was also another big air base. Dafoe, Davidson, Assiniboine, Yorkton. I mean, there were so many places in our province that train young men and women for combat.
I think it's important to note that Saskatoon also had an air base that closed, I think, in the 1950s. When we look at the evolution of flight training and flying in general in Saskatoon and central Saskatchewan, did we see any, I guess, interest from crop spraying and more types of industrial uses of aircraft that you have history on?
Yeah, well, that's the cool part about it is, the story doesn't stop at the Commonwealth Training Plan. I mean, airplanes were such a big part of exploring and opening up the north. From float planes to hauling fish to exploration, you name it. And then, of course, you hit the agricultural part, right? Crop spraying. I mean, how important is that? How many times have you driven down a highway in Saskatchewan and seen a crop sprayer? And it's still relevant to this day. So those are also stories that we tell here at the museum, and to share that with the younger generation that maybe just doesn't see that on a day-to-day basis.
You mentioned that your introduction to the museum came by way of volunteering. Is there a large volunteer pool, or do you have people that regularly show up? But what would they do?
So we've got a really good core base of volunteers. I'd say there's probably around 60 to 80 that come around on a fairly regular basis. All our pilots are volunteers. All of our maintenance engineers, our front end staff, our tour guides, our board, they're all volunteers. I'm the only paid position that we have here at the museum other than our summer student program. But it's an amazing place to see people that are just giving back to the community and showing the city and the province what the history of aviation is. So very blessed to be around those type of volunteers.
Do you see an interest in your role there, just in terms of people that are coming? Is it more of a mature audience that likes to reflect and reminisce, or do you see an interest in youthful kinds of demographics where people are interested in perhaps pursuing a flying career or things like that?
So we get all walks of life, which is really interesting. Well, before I started here, I would have ventured to say that I thought that you would see that more retirement crowd that want to respect the past and kind of, maybe see some of their days of the past. But we have all walks of life. We had Aviation Days, which is our 2-day aviation event in August. And we saw little kids all over the place, from 5 years old to teenagers. It's really, really taking hold of that younger generation who are maybe exploring at, venturing to either be a pilot or an aircraft maintenance engineer, and they're coming to us and exploring and asking questions. We also have a grade 6 program, so we have schools that come through. So that's another way that we get the younger generation involved in aviation.
I know my brother had pursued his aviation career through Saskatoon at Pulse Aviation then, and on through the Air Force, and eventually with Cathay Pacific. And I think as I'm looking at different names through Mitchinson's and other flying schools over the years, we have not only a deep pool of pilots, but we're also heavily focused on ground crews and support staff. Do you see that happening across the industry, that there's not just the flying aspect of it, but the support network to keep the pilots and planes in the air?
Some of the best engineers that I've met, in working around with the airplanes have come from our province and the prairies. And one of them in specific, who's one of our volunteers, actually works out in BC, and he flies back and forth and still volunteers at our museum because he is one of the experts when it comes to these older airplanes, and he's been contracted by a firm out in British Columbia to restore a DC-3 actually. And so we see that that get it done mentality of Saskatchewan people translates into that field and opens up doors for people. And we know that a lot of the companies like hiring not only pilots from Saskatchewan, but maintenance engineers, ground crew, just anything when it comes to doing that, because we're just that type of person to get the job done.
What do you have for hours of operation? Are you open throughout the year, or is it more of a seasonal thing, or how is it generally run there?
Our main season, of course, is going to be our flying season, right? So starting in May, we are open 6 days a week. So we'll be open Tuesday to Saturday. Right now, in our winter hours, we are still open, but we're just a little bit condensed. So we're Wednesday to Saturday, and our hours are 9 to 4.
And when we look at the museum itself, as many museums as I've attended over the years, different parts of North America. If we look at the growth of those museums, how are they typically funded, and what are you experiencing with any pressures that people could help you?
So most of those larger museums, if we look at places, I'll use the Royal Museum in Winnipeg, for instance, have a lot of either provincial funding or federal funding. And I think because we're the new kids on the block, we're not quite there yet. I mean, we will get there at some point, but our 95% of our funding is coming from our patrons, our flight program, and generous donors. We have a donor board just outside this door here that's just right to the rafters, from anywhere from 5,000 to various hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep this place going. And I think it's a struggle nowadays to be that new kid on the block, and we have to keep reminding ourselves that we are new. We're only 4 years old, right? So we don't have the history that those larger museums have. But I think as time goes on, some of those grants and some of that money that's available federally and hopefully provincially will come our way.
I think it's a very good thing when one hears that sound or that tiger moth in the summer months. Definitely a distinctive tone when you listen for it. What do you see with the level of interest that people have? Is it just about the actual physical airplanes, the smaller ones, the larger ones, and is there any interest in wartime aircraft and modern day warfare that we're seeing now?
It's kind of it's a base demographic. I think they all have their little niche of interest. I mean, the Tiger Moth, though, is our most popular airplane. It was an initial trainer for the Second World War, so more people flew Tiger Moths than anything else. And I think it's just the romance and the elegance of a biplane. There's just something about it. So that little airplane last year flew 316 rides with customers. That's just outstanding. So I think there's a lot of people that just want to look into the past that way, but we see everything. I mean, during aviation days, people love seeing the modern Harvard 2s from Moose Jaw come and look at those modern equivalents too. So I think there's passion for all of it, but I would say the Tiger Moth's number one for sure.
Steve, if people did want to find out more about the Saskatchewan Aviation Museum, how would they do that, and how would they get a hold of you?
Best thing to do, jump on our website at saskaviation.ca, and they'll give you a link to all our social media platforms and also our phone number and address.
Steve Molinelli, thank you very much for making some time. The museum's in good shape with you at the helm. Thanks for doing this.
Really appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Stay with us, folks. We're coming right back.